Hello, welcome back to XLN3, the podcast, of course, where we break down the plays and the players from the previous week's games of mid and heavyweight League of Legends tournaments with XLN3. I've got Zephyr and Doctor with me here again, here to help me break down exactly what happened in these games. Hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, QuiteIndubitably. Indubitably.
I'm
Yeah,
your
that's a
host,
word.
QuiteIndubitably.
Hey, and I'm Zephyr, and I'll be doing the heavy analyst stuff.
And as you can see below, I'm Doctor, and I'll be doing the mid analyzing. And this was definitely an interesting week, to say the least.
Interesting indeed on many fronts.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get into it. We're going to break down some of the games. We're going to talk about what we might expect next week. Try to get some spicy predictions for you guys today.
Oh, God. Yeah, sure. I assume that's more on my front. I don't know. Doctor, what do you do over at mid?
What do? I do
Yeah.
everything. I cast, I analyze, we look at, upcoming things. Let's see, looking up at upcoming matches.
Yeah.
This Tuesday, the 20th, we are going to have Glaive Black versus the South Dakota Coyotes, Divine Ascension Scarlet versus Glacial Rising Phoenix, Goliath Online, and Catalyst Blaze, and then Drift Esports versus Catalyst Frost. Hard call out. At least two of those matches are going to be 2-0s right off the bat. Glaive Black probably going to get the 2-0, and it's probably going to be Catalyst Frost getting the 2-0. Goliath Online, I could see them 2-0ing as well.
Why is there so many 2-0s?
Well, this week did see only 2-0s in mid-league. So let's go ahead and get into the mid-analysis. Let's start first with Doctor today.
Yeah,
Especially since Zephyr decided to leave the chat.
Yeah, we don't need Zephyr.
No.
But yeah, this week was a bit of an interesting one. Like you said, it was all 2-0s across the board. Everybody just showing up and really dominating their respective match. And so, when we look specifically at the broadcasted match here, which was Goliath Online versus the South Dakota Coyotes, it is a pretty interesting matchup. There were some rank discrepancies, but also the picks that we were seeing out of the teams on both sides were actually super interesting. Goliath Online breaking out the Fiddlesticks jungle, heading into Kane and Kale top on the side of the Coyotes. Like, they just had some really interesting draft decisions that when you look at it on paper, you're kind of just sitting there like, yeah, of course that team won.
I was looking at the second game draft and I thought to myself, did they only pick the Kale and then camp top because their top laner as Volibear got an early lead last game and was unable to carry?
I guess that might have been the game plan, and we don't have their comms. But the game one Volibear was so good. Like, was able to solo kill, the opposing Maokai a couple times, was really, taking a lead for themselves. But they built full tank Volibear, which does not scale very well whatsoever. Even if they had swapped into like a Trinity Force or something, there's a little bit more power there. You can be more, front forward with it and really kind of stomp a lane. But when you're winning the lane already as a full tank, you don't need that. The problem was the rest of the map seemed to struggle. And that Misfortune Morgana bot lane on the side of Goliath Online was so strong. It's such a difficult, setup to try and break into as that Thresh Ashe.
Right. No one really has a good time playing into Morgana, do they?
No, the forever Dark Binding, it's still a thing. We also saw a lot of Lilia ganks as well, which can be very problematic for Thresh Ashes. They don't truly have that many escapes. So unless you're playing super passive as a Thresh and Dark Passage your Ashe out, any type of lockdown is forever lockdown at that point. Throwing a bullet time and just everything falls apart.
That is quite unfortunate to see. It's not exactly the kind of game you want to lock Thresh into. You want to feel aggressive on the Thresh, and it's certainly a big feels bad to have to play passively or risk practically feeding your lives away.
Do you know when the Thresh was picked out, fan-wise? Do you remember?
Absolute first pick. Lose side
Really?
first pick.
That is,
Uh,
I mean,
that's
I
questionable.
do like the confidence, right? I do love it when a support player says, "I am a god on Thresh, pick me Thresh." But why were they not banning Morgana?
So their first round of bans were actually pretty focused on very strong picks. They banned it with the Renekton, the Fiddlesticks, and the Samira, which Samira is kind of nutty right now. I think the champion's a little overtuned, but I mean, that's neither here nor there. Fiddlesticks was a full targeted ban onto the Goliath Online jungler, and spoiler, Game 2 shows exactly why. And Renekton's a pretty strong pick right now. Conqueror, Blade of the Ruined King, all of these things kind of come together in this perfect storm of LS's nightmares. And so they didn't really have any room in that ban phase to ban away the opposing support. But I'm sure Zephyr will agree. We're almost in like a support counter pick matchup where you get so much utility out of the support role right now that you really want to save it as late as possible in a lot of regards.
Yes, absolutely. I personally think they lost a lot of power in that bot lane from the fact that they picked Thresh first, because that's immediate countered. And Morgana's in such a good state right now, especially if you're looking to pair her with such an early heavy presence AD carry like Misfortune into that first game, that you essentially just gave lane away for free, in my opinion. It's not to say Thresh can't work. It just makes it so much harder.
I do appreciate the attempt, though. It seems to me that Coyotes are going to have to work on their draft a little bit to do well. If I recall correctly, they have yet to win a game. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're struggling a little bit right now. We didn't take too much of a look at their week 1 games. And the drafts, I think at the end of the day, their draft ended up pretty cohesive. I talk a lot on broadcast about how ease of execution comps can really, make or break a lot of teams, especially in these amateur leagues where sometimes there are skill discrepancies. Sometimes your junglers are gold going into a diamond, and you're just kind of like, oh man, this is less than stellar, this is less than optimal, and so you need something that is easier to operate. Like, in this game we saw from the Coyotes, we saw, Volibear, Hecarim, Rumble, Ashe, Thresh. On paper, that's a pretty interesting draft. There's lots of ease of execute things in the Ashe, the Thresh, and the Volibear. Like, you have predetermined things that you need to do. Hecarim and Rumble mid, however, require a lot of setup. They require a lot of team cohesion to really try and combine, the Onslaught of Shadows and the Equalizer. And we saw it work a couple times, but when your opponents are Maokai, Lilia, Misfortune, and Morgana, like, they're so much more straightforward, so much easier to operate.
So,
I mean,
Coyotes looks like they're going to have to, in a sense, take it back to basics for a while, don't you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that could be a nice little turning point for them as we head later into the season.
yeah, there you go. Pretty cut and dry.
All right. Well, in mid league,
That's
we
this one.
saw exclusively 2-0s this past week. People are getting stomped all over the place. Doctor, what do you attribute this to?
Right now we're still in week 2, so some of the teams are still a little bit earlier in their cohesive points, this being the first ever mid-league season. And so teams, they're trying to get into a nice little cohesive unit. They're trying to learn each other's play styles, adapt to that, and some of the teams are a little bit further along in regards like that. When you look at like Goliath teams, like, they've been around before, they've played in like the testing grounds and things like that, so they already have some of that teamwork and togetherness built up. And in this level of play, that is so huge. Like, you can get away with some of these non-meta picks when the rest of your team trusts you to do so. And so right now we're still early on in the season. As it continues on, the games are going to get a little bit closer. And even in these 2-0s, they're not always super stompy. Like, if we look back to week 1, our stream match, it was a 2-0, but it was a close 2-0. And I know that's like sounds like a cop out, like, oh man, we almost got them. Like, oh yeah, we did it, but we still lost. It's like, no, if you're keeping a 2k gold deficit for 30 minutes and then all of a sudden you just lose at Elder Dragon, like, that's a pretty close game.
Absolutely. And I don't think any teams seem to be performing particularly poorly. It definitely does not encourage anyone to just lose 2 games in a row, and those are your games. But
Wow. Beautiful. Hot takes all around. Crazy. It's almost like teams don't want to get 2-0'd. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Listen.
If you just don't want to lose, just win, forehead. Like,
Hey!
what's harder than that?
That's the strategy mid
The mental toll is a little rough, though, I do think. All right. Well,
Yeah?
Doctor, you think that some teams are going to have to deal with even more of this mental toll going into week 3. You think there's going to be some more 2-0s. When do you think we're finally going to settle into some more competitive series where we're going to see more 3 games?
So I mean, we have a couple weeks left in the regular season. I do know that's for some of the collegiate teams we're heading into like midterm season and things like that. So their games may get a little bit shakier. And so right now, things are looking pretty rough for, the lower half bracket. We're looking at teams like the Coyotes and hold on, let me pull up the standings again. But like, yeah, I mean, we're heading into a little bit of a rough time. The teams that are at the top have a lot of practice behind them, and there's a reason they're at the top. Glaive Black, Dag Scarlet, like these teams have a lot of work put behind them already. So it might be a while. It might be even till playoffs when we start seeing, Glaive Black and Dag Scarlet play off against each other.
All right. Thank you, Doctor. Are there any more thoughts on mid-league today?
Sit down with your team and your coaches, analysts, if you have them, and look at the current meta and see how it adapts to your draft. Draft does so much for your team, and we said this last week on the podcast, where you don't necessarily lose in drafts, but like it helps if you have a good draft. Like if you can actually set your players up to succeed and then leave it up to their execution, you're gonna go farther than letting the players just dictate what they want to play.
All right, then.
Crazy.
Let's go ahead and get
Zephyr.
heavy with things.
Yeah.
Let's bring in Zephyr. Let's talk about Heavy League.
Oh man, I love Heavy League. It's almost like I do it.
Wow,
Thursdays.
Zephyr.
Hey guys, if you're looking to catch extra Heavy League content and you only watch the podcast, which I know that's how that works, come on every Thursday, like roughly 8 Eastern. We start a little bit earlier. We start around like 7:45 Eastern. If you want extra XLNC content, we do that. Next week, it's actually going to be a competition between the 2 power couples. Get ready for that.
Ooh. Tell us more about that, Zephyr.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah. There's 2 power couples. It's me and B-Town versus Dia and Paul. I can't tell you any more than that, but it's a little bit of a competition.
I
All right, so right off the bat, I already know that Dia and Paul won, knowing both you and
those
B-Town.
boomers. Hell, no, I shouldn't say that, but heck no. I hope they don't watch this.
You said those boomers, and I immediately thought, what, WYO boomers?
Yeah, we can get to talking about them like immediately.
Immediately? Yeah. Well, let's get into it. Tell us about the WYO boomers, Zephyr.
Well, first of all, I'm very sad because of them I lost my my predictions for the week. They inted on me, and it actually ended up being the first 2-0 that was not CGC. Booyah Exiles took a 2-0 versus WYO Boomers. Quite sad. If you haven't watched the VOD, you should.
They were just doing their best to surprise you a little,
No.
They just...
They heard you talking smack and
I was about to say
about it.
That's literally what Booyah said to me before they got into it. They heard me talking smack on this podcast the week before, and they said, "Oh no, we're gonna show you," and they did. Booyah.
They really did. Let's talk about Booyah's newer team comp. What's the roster looking like? What?
Good. All right, no.
All right,
No,
let's
no,
wrap
give
this
much up.
up. Booyah's
Yes.
looking good. Let's go home.
Yes, Booyah's looking really, really solid here. Okay, I've got everything pulled up now, making sure this is all okay. So yeah, Booyah. Last season they did pretty okay. They didn't make it really close to finals, and as a result, they did a complete roster shift. And the biggest notable change here for the roster here on Booyah is Corn, especially in the mid lane now. And it has proven pretty darn juicy of a change and has worked out pretty well here. They kept Brand Z in the support role as well as they moved over the roster, but everything else completely fleshed out, new, some schmoves all across the board. And honestly, like Booyah said themselves in the interview when we were discussing it with Sashu, while game one, their first against CGC, was them kind of grabbing their footing here. This is a team that definitely looks to contest all the way up until potentially even all the way to finals. I mean, these guys, they are a group of really individually talented players. Like, we're talking that you can see potential wins come from any side of the board here. The only issue is that they're just getting into the footing of the general cohesion of the team. They haven't quite got everything under control yet, but this second game that they've thrown out here, the second series here, definitely it's very promising. I mean, they looked gross.
In a good way, of course.
Oh no, like they look gross. When I say gross, I mean they looked like, oh man, I feel really sorry for WYO boomers.
So Booyah did really and truly stomp game one.
Yeah. Game one was a culture shock. I'll say that. Because coming out of week one, I had little thoughts regarding Booyah. Maybe it's just because CGC is a monster right now, but either way, Booyah, they did not give me much hopes. And then to come into this first game here, 23-7, that's the number to go with, right? And I cannot give any praise towards any lane from WYO Boomers. It was simply as if they really weren't allowed to show up into this game. I mean, no, it was disgusting. I mean, we saw like an early kill, maybe or two, go the way of WYO, and things looked hopeful, and then they got absolutely slammed by the freight train that was Booyah. You can go down lane by lane by lane here. I mean, this is like a 7K gold lead on set in your top lane. Like, what is the competition there? It's insane. 3K in the jungle, 2K in the mid lane, roughly 2K in the AD carry position, 2K in the support. There was no major competitive source here. After, I believe, halfway through the game, there were no kills given to WYO for the rest of the game, like at all.
It looks like the last kill was around like 12 and a half minutes, and then literally nothing left.
Nothing.
After that.
Not an objective, not a tower, nothing. They didn't even get a turret.
That's actually wild. There's one massive team fight at like the 12-ish minute mark.
Yeah.
And then they pick up Bard in trade for a tower, and just nothing after that.
That's it.
That's insane. I'd have never seen that in, I think, the history of League of Legends.
Yeah, in the history of League of Legends, never seen anything, never, never.
And it's really
totally
surprising to
sarcastic.
see this much dominance. Okay, Zephyr, you're having a day. You really are having a day.
Why does everyone always say that? I literally come in as I'll be out, the same old Zephyr, and people are always like, Zephyr, buddy, you're having a day. It's the same phrase.
I do think there's a little extra Zephyr today.
What is that? Am I a spice now? A little bit of extra Zephyr in your pasta?
Oh.
I hope I'm tasty.
All right.
Okay, moving on. Game 2, because that
Next.
was better. All right, we saw a little bit of some contention here. The top lane wasn't a wash this time around. Booyah showed up, respectively, of course, on the Orin, but WYO Boomers definitely mitigated in comparison to the 7,000 plus gold lead we saw in game one, and the Mordekaiser especially did make for some numerous fronts. Rosero played really well at times, but it definitely fall off. There's just a huge, like, okay, Booyah's Booyah, really talented, great. Now let's discuss why did YOW Boomers just fall off so dramatically? Because in game two, it actually looked like they had something relatively okay going on here for the first 10 or so minutes. They picked up the Rift, they got Dragon, double turret, in comparison to what what Booyah was pulling off, it wasn't anything crazy. It actually looked like they were in the lead for a while here. The issue was that as the fights went on, of course, you're playing into Booyah, who has a really great scaling comp on the Syndra and Orin, respectively, and those ornaments and whatnot. That's going to be an issue no matter what. That's just comp. But this team could not put together a secure or just well-versed team fight at any given point. It really felt like there was two major moments here, one around Dragon, one around Baron, where they had Rosero front so much damage, and he was basically, you could not get past him for a good portion of these fights. But no one from WYO Boomers was able to push anything back. You did not see any susceptible damage come through from Ashe. You did not have Orianna pull off any major wicked shockwaves or anything like that. Zach is just your front as well, and he performed essentially the same job as Rosero, just on more engaged potential. There wasn't anything there for them to capitalize on. And while I feel like Rosero did pretty well into this matchup, and he provided the full birth of his tool for this team here, it fell off, and then it didn't work anymore. And then the lack of cohesion all came to a climax, and you just saw this late game scaling comp with Corrin on Syndra and, the Orin coming through, and it just collapsed entirely.
Yeah, this game two draft is pretty interesting to me. Looking at the bans, 4 supports and a jungler, and somehow, Red Side ends up on a Zac. That's pretty interesting to me. But like the set support seems so almost telegraphed, right? Because you're picking the Bard. I don't know what the actual pick order was but like set just seems so hard countered by the Bard Caitlyn. I mean, putting up 4, 5, and 3 as a scoreline, I don't think that's too terrible as the set support in that situation. But overall, like there's so much magic damage that, Ornn just gets a free lane almost.
And he kind of did. Rosero did well into it, but he did not shut down the prowess of Ornn. He held it back for maybe the first 5 or 6 minutes, but then it's Ornn. What are you going to do? You can, Zach, like you said, is not one of the most optimal junglers, I guess, right now. And in terms of damage, he's definitely not going to make any schmoves on that Ornn in the top lane. And Ornn got to scale freely. And you can literally go down the list here, and most of the ornaments came through all across the board except for on Graves. 35 minutes. It's huge.
Yeah, Graves doesn't even need it. I mean, honestly, swap out Zach for like Rek'Sai or Lee Sin or something. I think you have a much better composition. A little bit less engage potential, but maybe then just swap like Set to, I don't know, like Alistar, Braum, something like that. Yeah. Pretty solid draft at that point.
I will say Papa here in the jungle, the jungler for YWO Boomers respectively. This team, yes, is put together under Wyoming, whatever the university full name there. So they are respectively newer, and they are kind of getting into the kind of role of things and whatnot. I will say Papa, there is a lot to be said and done about this current jungle. I'm not saying he's bad, because I'm not. I'm being nice. I'm just saying that there was a lot of moments where he definitely did not take the full impact of what Zach had to offer. And part of that is at the fault of him. Zach is Zach. I mean, he's not a great jungler right now, respectively. But also there was a lot of moments where it did feel like the pressure here exuded from Booyah, respectively, when it came to jungle. was just 10 times more oppressive. And
Yeah.
if I really would have to go back and look at week 1, the first series here, because WYO Boomers did win that. And I want to see how they perform on good footing here, because it really did feel like a lot of things fell short for them this time around.
Although,
Yeah, I mean, these collegiate teams, as they continue to build up, will be getting better. I truly believe that. I think collegiate really is the next big step in Amateur League of Legends.
Yes,
And I mean, the fact that there are already so many programs is amazing. And they're working on teaching these kids, how to play. And we're only in week 2, right?
right,
week
of
3?
course. Week 2. We're going into week 3.
I thought Heavy was ahead of week.
Soon.
TM.
I will say that, we are really picking apart what happened with Boomers this week, but at the end of the day, it is hard to blame them too much for having lost to this incredibly impressive showing from Booyah.
Yeah, that's respectable too. Booyah came out of the gates insane here. And if we go back and if we look at week 1 here, because I wanted to make sure that this team, they've got some spunk to them. And it is very obvious to see. It's literally identical comps almost, respectively. I mean, you've got that hardcore Mordekaiser in the top lane doing really well again. You've got the Ashe and the Orianna. I mean, these are really similar comps, and they do pull them off. So I really feel like maybe it's not their week, or maybe Booyah's Booyah.
Maybe Booyah is Booyah.
Which is really surprising, because
Right.
after week 1, I did not have faith, and my predictions suffered as a result.
None of us, I think, were expecting to see this kind of domination coming from Booyah.
No.
And it's really exciting to see them contributing this level of competition.
Yeah. I really would go out on a limb here and say nearly every single team, when it comes to Heavy League, offers definitely some level of intense competition to the nth degree. I mean, I feel like every team has a chance of making it at least all the way up until semis, finals, respectively. Some
impressive.
are a little some are a little weaker, some are a lot better when it comes to quote unquote CGC, but I don't know, it's crazy in my opinion. It's when you have half your games going to 3 games when you have half your series going to 3 games every single week, I mean, that's awesome, respectively, to all these teams.
Fantastic.
That
So
is a good showing.
Heavy League is looking great. It's looking very competitive. Very excited to see the matchups. Coming up this week is going to be week 3.
Ooh, yes.
We are going to see Mizzou versus Anarchy Fallen Paladins, and I do believe that is going to be the streamed game, which is going to be very fun to see. We're going to see Lotus versus Booyah Exiles. So now that we've seen what Booyah can do, it's going to be really exciting to see if maybe we can watch Booyah stomp again. To be perfectly honest, and now I like to think that Zephyr is the mean one here, but to be perfectly honest, I'm not really expecting Lotus to do well into this matchup. I do believe in the newfound dominance of Booyah.
I don't know. I don't know.
You think Lotus is going...
Lotus pulled off a victory this week. Let's be honest.
They did pull off a 2-1 victory this week. This is true.
My bet because we're getting into discussing next week's matches. So let's go pull back real quick. Mizzou, Anarchy, respectively. Mizzou, while I love you, you are the only team that is currently 0-2 in the league right now. Everyone else has won a game at least. And Anarchy, I also have a bias towards them, and I vote for them no matter what. So Anarchy is going to win next week.
Okay, well, then we're going to have a problem on this XLN3 podcast where we seem to have an incredibly strong bias towards Anarchy, because I am also extraordinarily biased towards Anarchy Fallen Paladins.
Sweet. Doctor, you got to be too.
Nope. Nope. Booyah.
Well, I mean, that's fine. Okay, whatever. Anarchy's gonna win though. From a statistical standpoint as well, too, not just the heavy bias that I vote for them every single week. Now, yes, Lotus, while I did make a case for them potentially showing up here against Booyah next week, their win was against Mizzou. And I do think Mizzou is on the lower end of the spectrum when it comes to teams right now, and Booyah has started to prove themselves and gain good footing. If anything, I'll give it 2-1 in Booyah's favor.
All right. That's all right.
Wait, no,
here we
we
are
got
getting
more
a
games,
specific
quite indubitably. Shush! I'm not done predicting.
Yes, sir.
Turn off
yes,
your
sir.
microphone, all
Oh my
right?
goodness. Okay.
FGCU Thunderbirds versus CGC. That is the game. I don't know why we're not streaming it, all right? That is the game.
How did you know I wasn't going to bring that up next, huh?
I know you
You
were.
know-
I was too, all right? Welcome to the
You
podcast.
know who to talk to, Zephyr, about getting games streamed. You know who runs the whole thing.
I'm sorry, but why would either Zephyr or I try to convince anyone to not stream Anarchy Fallen Paladins though?
Okay, very true. I really want to see my babies play. But FGCU Thunderbirds versus CGC is going to be a crazy match to watch. Respectively, because technically, while we have seen CGC beat Thunderbirds last season,
Well,
What he was going to say is that there's a chance that it doesn't happen again this time.
there is a chance indeed.
again.
Well, at least you have returned triumphant, Zephyr.
It's not. I promise, it's going to be a good game. I don't know why we're not watching it, but whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, we could because we are working towards getting VODs more regularly. So there is a very strong
Zephyr-like.
likelihood that we are going to get to review the full VOD of FGCU Thunderbirds versus CGC at UIC.
You know the words to my heart. Anyways, WYO Boomers versus Vlad Banners only. Wall Boomers, you know, I can't get a great reading on them anymore. Week 1, they performed pretty good with the same comps. Week 2, they got absolutely schmacked. I'm up in the air kind of with this team right now. They're definitely middle of the pack. Vlad Banners only, I have not been able to really get a great concept on where they are as a whole. This
the
week,
team
they...
name. Throwing you.
I mean, they happened to lose 0-2 against CGC, so I cannot blame them. That is CGC.
It is indeed CGC.
It is. This is CGC. Those guys are monsters.
But
That's
you know,
Zeus.
I do
you know?
recall, I'm reasonably sure, did they 2-0 or 2-1? But they did win last week.
No. Yeah,
week
last
1.
week they won 2-1. Last week
2-1.
They're 1-1 right now. Every team has won except for Mizzou, right? So that's what I mean. It's like I think that's going to be a really competitive game, and honestly, I have a really hard time predicting who's going to come out on top of that one. I would really have to I'd have to go back and kind of get a good analysis of both these teams on their better footings and these teams on their not so goody footings. But CGC is not a great team to look at when it comes to that because that team just smacks. So I have no prediction for that one. My prediction is 3 games. That's what my prediction is. 3 games up in
Can't
the
be
air.
wrong with that.
Yes, you can. It can go to 2 games.
All right, Zephyr,
all right.
any more notes on Heavy League today?
Beatdown's cool. Dia and Paul stink, and they're going to lose next week.
Man,
All
I
right.
can't wait to have this podcast next week when you're wrong. It's going to be great.
You're gonna she.
You know, we can go
The best
over...
part about it, there is no real winner week with whatever's going to happen that I can't talk about. But there's definitely a winner or a loser.
All right, well, we can review everything Zephyr apologies. Everything Zephyr ever gets wrong, we can always just go over it the next week. We can cover it in
Yeah.
full on this podcast. You know, just tell everyone exactly why Zephyr just does not know what he's talking about.
But Zephyr knows everything.
Oh, does he? This would have been a great time for your Wi-Fi to cut out, honestly.
Yeah, it just cuts out right there. It kicks me out. We're working on getting that fixed, and by "we're" I mean me, and by me I mean me, and it's not working.
Do
But
I
you
need
know
to
what?
ship you an Ethernet cable?
I have an Ethernet cable. Okay, it's plugged in right now. That's not the problem. Oh my god, I don't want to get into this. It's such a headache.
All right, so
Internet
let's
Do
move
something.
on.
Do something else.
Moving on to my favorite segment of the show. Of course, this is Indubitably's Insights, the part of the show where I get to talk about whatever the heck I want. And I want to talk today about losing, and particularly losing as some of these university teams. I think it's an apt week to talk about this because mid-league saw so many 2-0s, and it feels truly soul-crushing at times to be just steamrolled over, especially if that's going to happen to you multiple weeks on end. So I wanted to talk about some of the stress involved in playing competitive League of Legends, particularly from the university perspective. Now,
is this like your UCLA kind of thing? Is this where you put your
Right.
plug in? You guys still hunting for students?
Go hunting for students. No, we have our roster. Our roster is locked.
Varsity or junior varsity?
JV. I mean, our varsity roster is also locked, but I do not manage varsity. I manage JV for those of you at home.
know your
Hello,
JV
I am a
roster.
UCLA student, and I manage UCLA Esports JV League of Legends roster. It's actually been a very interesting experience for me going into the collegiate scene because I've spent most of my time here on the amateur scene, which has a lot of collegiate teams and a lot of collegiate players who are not on explicitly collegiate teams, but does have that mix, right? There are a lot of professionals who play competitive league on the side. There are people who, have a lot more time to dedicate than your average college student to improving their play, reviewing VODs, and generally doing the work that is required to show up week after week. And you do see some working professionals who have less time than the average student and still manage to get involved somehow. And big props to people like that. I mean, everyone here on the amateur scene, we are here because we want to be here in our free time, in our not so free time. The entire amateur scene is made up of dedication. But I think to great end. Doctor, earlier you were talking about how you believe that the collegiate scene is the key to unlocking a lot of North America's talent. And I'll have to agree with you on that.
Yeah,
Collegiate players. Sorry, go on.
It's really nice to see what the collegiate scene has kind of evolved into. I remember a couple short years ago when Clerky went to Maryville for the first time, and we started seeing what collegiate could be. And now Maryville is starting to get some really tough competition. Other schools are building up their programs themselves. We're sending different teams to C-Law Worlds or whatever, and like that in itself is insane. Like we sent collegiate players to, I believe it was China, last season, and they were able to compete against some of the best collegiate teams in the world. Like that is absolutely insane. And I am almost one of the believers in that some collegiate level programs could beat academy teams. Like, I don't think that's too far out of the realm of possibility, especially when you look at some of the names that are on these collegiate teams and you're like, they've been like top 10 ranked challenger for like 2 years now. And, look at academy.
Right. I mean, you called out Maryville, and I think rightly so. It is a name that a lot of us are familiar with, even those who don't particularly follow the collegiate scene, just because of how dominant Maryville is. Now, as a UCLA student, UC Irvine is within my family of sister schools. And UCI is notably one of the few schools that really ever has a shot at standing up to Maryville. So when UCLA gets stumped by teams like Maryville and UCI, we can at least cheer on our fellow anteaters as they go. Now, Zephyr is...
What a terrible mascot.
Okay, listen. I love the anteater thing, right? Because
Why?
UCI... Okay, honestly, but like... Okay, think of typical mascots, like UCLA, we're the Bruins. It's a type of bear. It's a bear. Like, whatever. It's a freaking bear.
What do you
But
mean
an
it's a type of bear? What
an
does that
anteater,
mean?
that's cool.
What is a Bruin?
You know there are different types of bears, right?
I've never heard of a Bruin bear.
You've never heard of the Boston Bruins? It's literally a logo of a bear.
Hold on.
It's a brown bear.
Bruin.
Right.
How do you spell Bruin? I can't spell.
B-R-U-I-N.
R-U-I-N.
Anyhow, I think anteaters are very fun. And one of the things that
Spelled
you two may
burning.
not know, but UCI students actually have a very fun sort of cheer or whatnot. You know, there are mascots where it's like, oh, this animal says, and in English we have a typical onomatopoeia that we use for that animal's call or growl or whatnot. There isn't much for the anteater, of course. So the industrious UCI students created Zot Zot, which is so fun. I mean, just, you know, cheer on UCI, Zot Zot.
It's just
But
a different word for
Let's
bears.
bring it back to League of Legends. Let's bring it back to League of Legends.
let's bring it back to League of Legends.
It's just a different word for bears.
All right, let's stop talking about mascots quite so much. But I
Our
was
mascot
actually
is a Labrador. Okay, there you
okay.
go.
That's cute. That's adorable.
Wait, we actually have it. Wait, hold on. No, go back to mascot discussion. We're not
Oh
done
my
yet. League of Legends.
Oh, Zephyr.
This is a podcast, all right? We are allowed to go on tangents and disappear into me showing you our school's dog.
This is technically me talking about whatever I want, so I suppose I can
shut up,
lend that
Zephyr.
leeway.
It's not a
to
Labrador.
Zephyr.
It's not a Labrador.
It's not a Labrador.
I don't know what thing that is.
Oh
Oh,
no.
man.
Okay.
Keep it to
Well.
yourself, Zephyr.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
So, back to League of
interesting
Legends
with the
a little
collegiate
bit.
scene. Like, it's they're so good. Like, they're getting better every
Right.
day. They're, you know, the directors and the program managers that are coming in, you know, they're starting to get some funding behind them thanks to the success of, you know, the successful departments. And, you know, there is this whole good and bad. I know Clerky called it, you know, the Wild West of esports once again. And, you know, that is true. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the better teams will become better. And, you know, maybe we'll start getting, you know, like some Pac-10 and Pac-12 style of competitions.
I mean, you look at Maryville, and they are so competitive on this front that their recruiting process for their collegiate teams almost looks like Academy LCS scouting. It is an extremely high level of play. We talk about, you know, the sort of money that this kind of success brings into collegiate programs. UC Irvine has an esports stadium. If you look at pictures of their facilities, they're really cool. I've never actually visited the UCI facilities. I'd like to at some point, maybe when this pandemic is over. I do believe it was the last time in recent years that UCI was able to beat Maryville. I actually attended the collegiate finals in person. They were held at the LCS studio in Santa Monica, Los Angeles. It was an exciting time. I am someone who's been to plenty of LCS games as someone who is so fortunate to live nearby or to have been
Couldn't be
stationed
me.
nearby pre-pandemic. And let me tell you, the energy of that game, that level of gameplay, is comparable, if not more exciting in some respects than LCS, because collegiate teams have, in some cases, less to lose. They tend to be a little more bombastic. It is fun to see, as a spectator, see people taking risks and fighting a lot. And win or lose, right? When you see collegiate teams anywhere near this level of play, just think about the kind of training that they're getting by participating in these competitive programs, in these competitive tournaments like XLNC, where we do see a number of collegiate teams. And we're very happy to have them, by the way. And we are thankful that they come and they play, even if they don't necessarily win. I am sorry to you, Coyotes. I hope you find your stride. But if you are Diamond in League of Legends, you already represent about 1% of the player base.
Isn't
That
Diamond like 0.1? I
it
think,
it,
actually?
it once you get to Diamond, it's point. Okay, so Plat 1, most of Plat 1 is a
Zephyr has
little
4 fingers
over
up.
1%.
I think it's 4%. Go with
Yeah, but you
3.
get any LP in Diamond, and that percentage shoots up like immediately, right? Because there are a lot of people who are D4
Let's see
0
this.
LP, and then it immediately shoots up to
Yeah,
1
I
and
just don't
sub
believe
1%. Okay, fine. Yeah, I
Rank
think last
distribution,
season
My
Plat 1,
gosh, it's
I
like the
think
top like
2.3%.
2% of players are in Diamond,
right.
with 1% of that 2% being in
Diamond 4.
Diamond 4.
0 LP.
Keck W. Keck W.
Man, them boys are thick.
So,
Oh boy.
you know, if you're a Diamond League of Legends players,
Wow, that is
like
crazy.
most people in this
You're the
tournament
tippity top.
are, you already represent a significant subset of players of the highest echelon of play on the ranked ladder. And I think it's easy to forget that sometimes, because when you play in a tournament like XLNC, you are playing against challenging teams and players who are similarly accomplished. But this does not diminish your accomplishments. And every time that you learn from these games that you play, even if you learned a lot because you lost, you are continuing to improve your level of play in a way that is not only extraordinarily impressive, but does a genuine service to NA as a region. Not to set Zephyr off, to mention Worlds, but NA has not been doing too well in Worlds the past few years, and this is something that is well known and hotly debated in the League of Legends scene, because NA fans do want to see us eventually get out of groups in Worlds. That would be fantastic.
If you really want to see NA win an international event, though, just look at FPS shooters, Valorant, Counter-Strike. We have won international events, CS:GO Major in Boston, shout outs to Cloud9. And, we have teams like, good old TSM in Valorant, picking up W's as well.
Okay, but remember, none of those are the most important game, League of Legends.
Very true.
So,
I'm about to just explode over here.
I'm sorry, I've broken Zephyr. I have really and truly just broken Zephyr here. But,
Oh my
when we look at the
gosh.
problems that NA faces, yeah, there are problems
So
that you can
many.
pinpoint. There are problems you can pinpoint within the org, whatnot, but something that is a recurring theme in criticisms of NA is the level of competition that NA players have to experience through solo queue. Zephyr is... You know what? Is it really that bad if I kill Zephyr? Is it really that
Kill
bad
me.
if I kill
I'm gonna
Zephyr?
come back until NA wins Worlds. Then I
Oh,
can die
no.
in peace.
All right,
Thanks.
so Zephyr will haunt us forever because NA will not win Worlds.
Wow! I will smite you.
He's going to possess the Summoner's Cup and just never leave.
Smiting is typically a holy spell, especially in Dungeons and Dragons. It is something that paladins can do. I think as a poltergeist, you may not necessarily have access to a divine smite. Just throwing that
I
out
am
there.
the Lord.
All right, you heard it here, guys. Zephyr is God. Who's signing up for the cult?
God, I will get you off this podcast if you slander NA anymore.
All right, so I will stop slandering NA, but to all of you collegiate players, congratulations on being here. Congratulations on both having the technical skill and the drive to go through the genuine mental strain that does constitute competitive League of Legends play. You have midterms to deal with. Goodness gracious.
Okay. That's the train of thought.
That's the train of thought. That's the train of thought.
All right.
That's
Cut
the
it.
train of
Good
thought.
time to
That's
end.
it. That's it.
All right. Thank you for joining us here on
the
XLN3. We equate the problems and stress of League of Legends
To midterms.
to midterms.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's not equating, but it is.
But you just did.
Listen, the fact that they have exams on top of this constitutes a lot of stress in someone's life.
I think the stress of losing is heavier.
Oh my goodness, Zephyr.
But that's Zephyr. The reason for that is because you don't feel like you're learning anything from a loss. You just see it as you being lesser than your opponent. But, you just got to take it win or learn, not win or loss.
Exactly. Now, Zephyr
Or-
does not like this optimistic stance.
Or
Zephyr.
Or you're just a potato. Yeah.
or your score says 0-2 and I'm upset.
Zephyr. All right, everyone, don't listen to Zephyr. It doesn't matter what Zephyr thinks. Doctor and I love you no matter if you win or lose.
Zephyr doesn't even know you.
Zephyr will
Were
disown you.
Zephyr will learn to own you and then disown you just to make you feel even worse.
I think Zephyr, as a coach, definitely goes the Kokoma route with the belt and everything else. Whereas
You get beaten in Zephyr's school of teaching.
Yeah, all right.
Oh no, Zephyr.
Cut it.
Oh gosh. Time to cut
Coyotes,
the
come
recording.
here.
Oh no. Zephyr,
WYO boomers.
no. Okay.
God rest their soul. I'm sure they'll do fine next week. Or else.
Or all right, let's hope you don't suffer Zephyr's wrath. Maybe get a restraining order, I don't know.
You can't
Look
stop
into
this
those
train.
legal avenues. This is recorded. We do have
Wouldn't be the
proof.
first time.
How do we close
Thank you,
this out,
everybody,
guys?
for tuning in to XLN3. We'll see you next week when we
No
have the
offense,
results
you
of
gotta
the week
you gotta
three
give them
events.
something entertaining, you know? League of Legends? Oh, I talk about that all week long. Beating teams for failing? When do I get to talk about?
On broadcast, Zephyr. That's literally what we're paying you for.
I don't
Wait, he's
think
getting
so.
paid?
Yeah, are you?
No. What? We're gonna have
Doc,
to
you
talk.
could honestly just cut the last 10 minutes or so from the VOD.
Doctor,
Just
do you
put it
get
up
paid?
before that. Yeah, of course I get paid.
Oh my
There you
goodness.
go. Woo.
You think a PhD doesn't get paid? Come on now.
Oh wow. I'm not even
PhD.
schooled yet. Zephyr don't
All
get
right.
schooling.
So yes, today at XLN3 we
There's
have
no
talked
bears.
about the games of League of Legends, and also for some reason CS:GO, but also the gender pay gap apparently.
Oh, no.
Take it up with Jake Kelton.
Anyhow, I think before we truly and honestly kill Zephyr, I think he's going to suffocate from laughing at my misfortune. Before any of that
God rest your
occurs,
soul.
I think we have covered the sufficient material for this week. We look forward to seeing you next week. I definitely look forward to seeing next week's games. Perhaps we can discuss our... Okay, Zephyr, okay. Perhaps we can discuss our bias towards Anarchy Fallen Paladins. Anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Farewell.